Today we're going deep on liquidation cascades, not as an abstract volatility event, but as a mechanical sequence with identifiable inputs, a predictable structure, and observable preconditions. By the end of this, you should be able to see the conditions for a cascade developing before it happens, not just recognize it after the fact. Let's start with what a liquidation actually is at the individual level. When the value of a position falls below the liquidation threshold, the protocol automatically closes it. The margin is lost and the position is removed from the book. One position, one liquidation, unremarkable in isolation. A cascade is what happens when many liquidations occur in sequence, each one contributing to the price move that triggers the next. The mechanism is a feedback loop, and like most feedback loops, it's self-reinforcing until the fuel runs out. The key question is, why do liquidations cluster? They cluster because traders don't set leverage randomly. Similar setups tend to use similar leverage levels. Similar directional bets cluster around similar entry zones. The result is that at any given time, there's a distribution of open interest and leverage across different price levels, and the zones where that open interest becomes eligible for liquidation are not evenly distributed. They form bands. Price levels where a disproportionate amount of positioned margin is at risk simultaneously. When the market moves into a densely populated liquidation band, the sequence unfolds like this. Multiple positions are liquidated near simultaneously. Each liquidation creates directional pressure, sell pressure in a long cascade, buy pressure in a short squeeze. That pressure pushes price deeper into the band. Deeper price triggers the next layer of liquidations, and so on until the band clears. Let me walk through a long cascade step by step, because the sequence matters for understanding how to read it. Market drops. Price enters a zone where many long positions carry liquidation thresholds. The protocol liquidates the first wave, the positions sitting closest to threshold. Those liquidations create sell pressure as positions are closed out at market. Price drops further into the next layer of long liquidations. The second wave hits, potentially larger because those deeper positions may have more capital behind them. If the next band is dense, the cascade accelerates. If thin, it slows. Eventually, the market exhausts the leveraged open interest in those bands and finds a level where the remaining positions have lower aggregate risk. That's when the cascade stops. The speed and severity of any given cascade depend on two variables: how much open interest is concentrated in the liquidation bands, and how much market depth exists to absorb the resulting order flow. High OI concentration and low market depth is the worst-case combination. The sell pressure from each liquidation moves price further per unit, which means each wave triggers the next faster. Now let's talk about what makes some cascades larger than others, because this is where the structural analysis gets useful. The first factor is OI concentration. If a large percentage of total market open interest sits at similar leverage levels targeting the same price range, the cascade potential is high. Thin, well-distributed positioning across many price levels is more resilient. There's no single band where enough liquidations cluster to create meaningful feedback pressure. The second factor is average leverage. More leverage means liquidation price sits closer to entry. The same price move hits more positions. When average market leverage is elevated, a relatively small adverse move can clear significant open interest. This is why high leverage environments feel structurally fragile during reversals. Third, market depth. In thinner markets, the sell pressure from liquidations moves price more per unit of volume. The same liquidation flow creates a larger price impact, which means the cascade propagates further before the feedback loop breaks. Deep, liquid markets can absorb more liquidation pressure before the move becomes self-reinforcing. Fourth, and this connects directly to a topic we covered in the funding rate episode, crowded directional positioning. When most traders are leaning the same direction, they are very likely clustered in similar liquidation bands. High positive funding rate combined with high open interest is one of the cleaner signals of elevated cascade risk on the long side. If a reversal begins from that setup, you're not just hitting a few over-leveraged accounts. You're potentially triggering a coordinated unwind of a crowded, similarly positioned pool of capital. How do you read cascade risk as a trader in real time? You can't see the exact liquidation distribution on most platforms, but you can infer the setup from observable inputs. The funding rate is your early warning. Heavily positive funding tells you longs are crowded. The cascade potential if a reversal begins is roughly proportional to how crowded that positioning was, not just how much it has to fall, but how concentrated it is in bands that will interact with each other. Elevated, sustained positive funding is a structural risk factor independent of your directional view. Watch how price behaves near prior support levels. Markets often front-run known liquidation zones. Traders who can infer where leverage is concentrated will push price toward those levels to trigger the cascade, then trade the recovery. This is why support levels sometimes fail dramatically instead of holding cleanly. The break isn't random. It's a deliberate probe into a zone where forced selling can be manufactured. After a cascade runs, the dynamic shifts. The market has significantly reduced its leveraged open interest overhang. Cascades are self-limiting. They consume the fuel that drives them. The period immediately following a cascade often sees lower realized volatility as the market reprices without the same positioning pressure. The crowded trade has been cleared. What's left is a cleaner book. Now let's talk about how protocol design interacts with cascade dynamics, because this is a meaningful structural difference across different venue architectures. On perp dexes built around external LP pools, cascade events interact with LP dynamics in a way that can extend the downstream risk. Mass liquidations at a loss affect the LP pool's accounting directly. The loss exposure sits with whoever was on the other side of those positions. That dynamic can shift LP incentives in real time, and in severe cases, the cascade propagates into the liquidity layer and affects the protocol's operational stability beyond just the trader positions that were cleared. On LeverUp's protocol-managed virtual liquidity architecture, there is no external LP layer for that contagion to propagate into. Execution and settlement responsibility sits at the protocol layer, and the risk engine operates independently of external liquidity provider behavior. Cascades still happen on LeverUp. They are a market structure phenomenon that no exchange architecture eliminates, because they emerge from how traders position, not from how the exchange is built. But the cascade effect is bounded by the protocol's own risk parameters, rather than by external LP sentiment or LP pool depth. Let me bring this back to the practical takeaway. Liquidation cascades are mechanically predictable, even if their precise timing is not. The inputs are observable before the event. Open interest concentration, average leverage, funding rate, market depth, these are all available to you before the cascade begins. Traders who actively monitor these inputs are in a fundamentally different position than those who don't. They can avoid placing themselves in crowded liquidation bands before a reversal. They can recognize cascade conditions developing in real time rather than being caught mid-sequence. And they can size positions appropriately when the structural risk profile is elevated. Smaller exposure when the book is crowded and fragile, larger exposure when the OI distribution is thin, and the feedback risk is low. Here's the framing I'd leave you with. Cascades don't happen to inform traders by surprise. They happened to traders who treated leverage as a free parameter and ignored the market structure they were entering. The data is available. Most traders just aren't reading it. We'll put links to the funding rate episode and the liquidations mechanics explainer in the show notes. Both are relevant context for everything we covered today.